This video is about making motion graphics in Fusion. Specifically, we're going to look at how you can connect trackers and shapes to make graphics that follow your footage. Along the way, we're going to use expressions, neural engine tools like Magic Mask and Intellitrack, learn how to fix tracking issues with tools like Reduce Points, and have some fun. If you'd like to follow along, there's a link to download the media we're using in the description. Here's the footage we are working with. I want to create a graphic that draws attention to the fact that the hiker is constantly scanning the terrain for hazards, and that in particular, she has spotted these 3 rocks. So we need a shape that locks onto her moving head and these rocks. Remember, the camera isn't locked off, so in essence, the rocks are moving too. Select the clip and head to the Fusion page. I will start by creating the shape that shows where she is looking. I'm using a polygon node. Her head is 1 point. The 3 rocks on the ground are the other points. And now I can close up the shape. A polygon node by itself is just a shape. We need to feed it into another node, like a background node, to get an image out of it. By the way, the hotkey to bring up the Select Tool dialog is Shift Spacebar. You're going to see me use that a lot. Connect the polygon node and the background node, and connect the background node to the main node tree. Remember, if you drag the output of one node onto the output of another, Resolve will automatically create and connect a merge node. Nice and easy. All right, I want to change the color of the background node. Black isn't the right color. I think a strong red is what we need. It communicates danger. Here's the problem. As I drag my playhead back and forth, the camera and the hiker move. The shape needs to be tracked in. By the end of the shot, it's no longer in the right place. It's possible to animate shapes to change over time. That's what this keyframe control here is for. It allows you to keyframe the entire shape. That's the problem, you see, it's all or nothing. The inspector doesn't expose individual controls for each point by default. We can change that. When a polygon node is selected, these controls appear at the top of the viewer. These are the tools we use for drawing and manipulating the shapes that we create. Start by selecting all the points in this shape. A simple click and drag will suffice. And head to this drop-down menu, which allows us to publish the points that we have created in this shape. Have you come across this word in Fusion before? Publish. When a control in the inspector is published, it's made accessible to other nodes in the composition. Publishing points does a similar thing. There's a bunch of different options here that sound very exciting. I'm going to choose the most basic publish option, the one at the top. Check this out. It has created individual controls for each point in my shape in the inspector, each with its own individual keyframing and expression controls. We'll look more at that later. For the time being, we're going to use one of the other publish options that we saw in that drop-down menu. I just wanted you to see the basic tool first. So I'll undo that. Those controls have now disappeared. Let's head back to the Publish menu, and this time choose Publish to Intellitrack Tracker. As you can see, those individual controls for each point are back. But this time, Fusion has created a tracker node and automatically linked those point controls to 4 separate Intellitrack trackers in this tracking node. Let me show you more, but first, a quick thank you to Audiio for making this video possible.
Here's 3 reasons you should try them out. Does it take you ages finding the right library music for your videos? You'll love Audio's Link Match AI feature. We often get inspiration from popular music we hear on streaming or on social media, but we can't license that music on our projects. But if you enter that track into Audio's Link Match AI, it will suggest tracks from its own library of over 450 artists that match the rhythm, energy, and genre. This saves so much time. Secondly, if you want to tweak a song, you can use Audio's Elements feature to download stems. Those are separate tracks for each instrument. Now you can remix the song yourself. And lastly, a subscription to Audiio also gives you access to their library of over 30,000 sound effects. Audio normally costs $200 a year, but right now you can get an entire year's subscription to Audio for just $60 using the link in our description. That's insane value. Supporting our sponsors is an awesome way of supporting our channel. Thank you for watching.
First, the composition has got momentarily broken. That's because this tracker isn't connected to anything. Let's fix that by connecting it to the node tree. When you hold Shift and drop a node on an existing connection, Fusion will automatically connect it when you let go. There we go. You can see it's now connected. By the way, I'm connecting it to my node tree in line. I'm connecting both the input and the output, and now it's a part of my image pipeline. But you don't have to, because we're not using this tracker node to make any changes to the image. You could connect it to an isolated branch by just feeding it the source image, but not connecting its output. It's up to you. Either way, that's better. The image is now no longer broken. Because I drew my shape in the correct place and then used that to generate the tracker node with that Publish to Intellitrack tracker button, the tracking points are automatically in the correct place. Good news. Additionally, these are Intellitrack trackers, not the old point trackers. This is a version 19 studio feature. Now you could do this with point trackers. They'd work really well on the rocks because they don't change shape or move around as much, but the Intellitrack tracker will do a better job with the hiker's face. Point trackers rely on recognizable points of contrast, whereas Intellitrack does a better job of just locking onto the object. As I'm on the first frame of my composition, all I need to do now is track forward. That's awesome. I can see it's already working. Now the track's finished, let's just watch through it. Yeah, look at that. That's super cool. Now that we've done the technical bit, drawn the shape and tracked it in, let's make it look better. I'll start by lowering the opacity of that merge node. I'd like the shape to have a soft edge. I can do that by selecting the polygon node and adding some edge softness. Next, I want this scanning beam to sort of fade away as it gets towards the ground. So I'm going to add a feathered rectangle mask to the beam shape. By default, when you connect two masks, they get added together. You can see in the viewer, my shape is now a combination of the rectangle and my scanning beam. If I change the paint mode on the second shape, which in this instance is the beam, if I change it to minimum, there you go, in minimum mode, the new shape appears wherever the two shapes intersect. Back to the rectangle node to tweak the shape. I will add some softness and then rotate and move it into place. Let's add some text. I'll use the text plus node for that. Connect it to the node tree. Choose a font. I'm going to type Hazard Awareness, and I'm putting some extra spaces in there to make room for the hikers in the image. And then I will change the Merge Nodes Apply mode to Overlay. I really like the way the text interacts with the image. As I scrub back and forth, it feels like the hiker walks between the two words, but the text still obscures her. Let's fix that. This is an easy job for Magic Mask. I will add a Magic Mask node. I'll connect it to my source image and then merge it back to the composition after the text node. Immediately, as you can see, it's obscured the text. I cannot see the text anymore. That's because we have not yet configured the Magic Mask. Let's equip the Magic Mask node in the left viewer. I'm doing that by clicking and dragging it into the left viewer. And also, I'll put the playhead back to the beginning of the composition. It just makes it ever so slightly easier as I only need to track the Magic Mask in one direction. Let's draw the hiker in. Instantly, you can see the text is back as the Magic Mask node now knows what part of the image we want to keep and then composite back on top of that text. I'll add some extra strokes to make sure that we get those arms too. In this instance, I think I will use the better quality Magic Mask mode. Now we can track forward. Done. How easy was that? And look at that. The hiker now walks over the text. Let's see the finished result. That's pretty cool. Now that we've learned the basic skills needed to link shapes and tracking points, let's look at another example, but this time a more complex composition. But just before we do that, did you see our masterclass on switching to Resolve from other NLEs? In 35 minutes, we cover the media, edit, fusion, and color page. We even look at Blackmagic Cloud. If you're new to Resolve, it's the perfect introduction. But even if you're a long-time Resolve user, I'm sure you'll still learn stuff that you never knew was in Resolve. There'll be a link at the end of the video. Please go check it out. All right, time for example 2. Here's the clip we're working with. Look at all the equipment that this hiker is carrying. I'd like to create a motion graphic with labels and arrows that point to each piece of kit. It's going to be another comp that requires tracking. So over to the Fusion page. This time, instead of creating the shape first, we'll do our tracking first. It's time to add a simple tracker node. I'll position the first tracker on the bag. I'll create another Intellitrack tracker, position that on the rope, create another, position that on the ice axe. I will position one on her crampons. And lastly, I'll create one more and position that on her cap. You'll see why later. Because in this instance, I am at the end of this clip, I need to track the clip in reverse. I really love Intellitrack. The previous point tracker would have really struggled with these points, especially the crampons, because they change shape and move around so erratically. Intellitrack is so good at locking onto objects. Let's do a little more setup before we start making lines. First, let's set up the text. This can be as complicated as you want. I'm going to keep it really simple and write all my labels in one text node. Bag, rope, ice axe, and crampons. Let's tweak the font weight, the line spacing, and alignment. And I'm going to head to the shading tab and turn on this 4th preset. If you change the level dropdown from character to word, it's a super easy way of giving the text a color background. This primary blue is not the right color for me though. Let's try the red that we used on the last example. Finally, let's change the apply mode of that merge node to overlay. A quick position tweak, and there you go. That looks all right. Time to draw some lines. We need a polygon node for that and a background node so we can control the line's color. I'm going with white. Let's get everything connected. Awesome. I can draw that first line. This one is for the bag. Let's modify the polygon. I don't want to make a solid. I just want a line. And I want to make it nice and thin. The border width control affects the line's thickness. As I scrub back and forth, you can see the line is not tracked in yet. It doesn't stay attached to the bag. Let's fix that. The polygon node is selected. I can select all the points in the shape using this button and now go to the Publish dropdown. Because I've already created a tracker, I'm going to use the top option to simply publish the points, nothing else. Now that these controls have been enabled in the inspector, I can right-click on them, one at a time, of course, and check this out. There's options here to connect this control with the tracker that we created earlier. I get to choose which of the 5 tracking points I connect this control with. It's as simple as that. That's really cool. I'm not going to do it that way though. I'm going to set this up manually using an expression. It sounds more complex, but it's not. I actually think it makes it a little bit easier. Here's the code. Tracker1, that's the name of the tracker node we created, dot position1. That's the name of the property that has the tracking data from the first tracking point we created. You might have seen the line jump a teeny bit when we did that. Now look at this. As I scrub back and forwards, you can see that the line is glued to that bag. Awesome. Let's make the other 3 lines. I don't need to build them from scratch. I can copy and then modify the one that we did make. Command-C or Control-C if you're on Windows, and then Command or Control-V. I'll hit it 3 times and check that out. Because when I pasted those nodes, I had a node already selected, those new nodes have been automatically connected to the node tree. This is one of the reasons I like doing this with expressions. Look how easy it is for me to update each new node to point to a different tracker. Just change one number in the expression. I like working like a factory line, doing all the same jobs consecutively. So now I've done all the points on the left-hand side of the lines. Let's circle back and sort out the points on the right-hand side. I could edit them in the viewer by clicking and dragging. Alternatively, because I've published all these points, I can manipulate them in the inspector to keep them lined up. I'm only changing the Y value of each point. Let's check out the result. That's pretty cool. Let's see if we can make it even more interesting. First, let's add some dots to the end of the lines to help make it clearer what they are pointing at. To draw those dots, I'm going to use an ellipse node, and once again feed that into a background node to control its color. I can copy the existing background node I've already created, and then get everything connected. I want to make a perfect circle. Ordinarily, the height and width control of the ellipse tool are not connected. Look what happens. It's not necessary to connect them because to create a perfect circle, I can manually adjust the width and height to match. Here's a little trick that I like to use though. Add an expression to the height tool and then drag this picker button onto the width control. The way this button works, whatever control you drag it onto, its name will be added to the expression that you're building. It's a great way of finding the name of a control when you don't know it. In this instance, it was a super quick way of linking the width and height controls. Now, with just a single control, I can change the size of this ellipse, but keep it as a perfect circle. How can I make this follow the tracking points we created on the equipment? That's right, the same controls we explored earlier. The center property controls the dot's position. I could use the Connect To option in the right-click menu, but once again, I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use an expression. I'll type the same code we used on the lines. And voila, the dot is now following the tracking point too. All right, you know the drill. It's time to duplicate this node and then go through and edit the expression in each so that each dot follows a different tracker. While I'm doing that, here's a top tip for you. If I was to create these new nodes as instance nodes, I could de-instance just the center expression. The big advantage would be that if I wanted to change the shape or size of the dots, I could affect all 4 of them at the same time, even though they have their own center expressions. We demonstrate instance nodes in our Fusion Compositing Masterclass. If you've not seen it, please go check it out. In the meantime, let's see how this composition is looking. That's pretty good. Here's a problem though. The tracking point on the crampon is a little bit jittery. I guess that's because the foot changes shape and moves around so much, it's easy to confuse the tracker. That's not a problem though, because it is possible to manipulate the tracking data. That's because Fusion stores it as keyframes, and like all keyframes, they can be manipulated. In this instance, I'm going to use the spline editor. I have the spline panel set up to only show the currently selected node. I'll turn on the 4th tracker in the viewer. There's a really cool feature you can use to simplify complicated animations that have lots of keyframes. First, select all the keyframes that you'd like to simplify, then right-click and go to Reduce Points. As you reduce the precision slider, can you see how the amount of keyframes in the graph is reduced? It only leaves keyframes where it feels they are needed. Now, if I want it even simpler, I can select these clumps of keyframes and use the Reduce Points tool again, but instead, I'll just manually clean up some of these unwanted keyframes. There's one last thing to do. Let's zoom to extents again so we can see all of the keyframes. That's this button up here. Select all the keyframes and hit S for smooth. It converts all of those linear keyframes into a Bezier curve with nice, smooth transitions everywhere. This will make the motion of our line smoother. Let's see how that's worked. That is better. It's subtle, but it makes a difference. Next, let's make some changes to the text. There's too much info here. I'm going to make it simpler. It's just going to say equipment. And then I'm going to modify that background we added. If I increase the width, that color band now goes all the way across the screen. That's looking good. I'd really like the text to move with the hiker. Do you remember that 5th tracking point we created on our head? Well, that's what it's for. I can have the equipment text follow that tracking marker using the same trick I used with the dots and lines. This time, I will connect it to tracker number 5. That's definitely worked. Cool, you can see the text perfectly follows her head. But I don't want it to be glued to her head. I want it off to the side. That's pretty common, right? That the point where you place a tracking marker isn't always the point that you want to apply your graphic to. The tracker has controls that allow for that. I've got the 5th tracker selected, the one on her head. By the way, a quick side note, it is possible to rename those trackers. It's also possible to rename all the polygon and ellipse nodes that we've been making. But because they're in the same order as the text and the items on her back that we're tracking, I've not bothered to rename anything as it's pretty intuitive and easy to follow as it is, and I'm working quickly. Now that the tracker is selected, there's additional controls for it down here. Look, there's an offset control. Let's add some X offset and some Y offset. Perfect. Now we need to update the lines so that the ends aren't just floating in the middle of the image. They need to be attached to that fifth tracker. That's easy to fix with some more expressions. I'm going to be adding expressions to the second points of all of these lines. Here's the expression I want to type, tracker1.position5. Let's add that to the other nodes too. I guess this is a situation where creating these polygon nodes as instance nodes would have helped, as I could have updated them all in one go. Never mind. Let's add another ellipse too. I'll copy one of the ones we've already made and change its expression so that it's following the fifth tracker. Now we have a dot on the other end of the lines. And I think I'll make this dot bigger than all of the other dots. I like the way that looks. Now it's kind of too close to the equipment text, so let's nudge the text over a little bit. Because I don't want to mess up the expression in the merge node, I'm going to use the text layer's own position controls to move it over. They are in the Text Plus Nodes Layout tab. Remember, the position controls in the text node, merge node, and the offset controls in the tracker all kind of get combined together to determine the text's final position. Awesome. Now, let me show you the power of these techniques we are using. Look how easy it is to continue to edit and tweak this motion graphic. Because everything is linked dynamically together with expressions, if I change one node, it ends up automatically adjusting all the other nodes too. That is so cool. Of course, the other trackers have offset controls too. I can move the bag arrow lower. I can move the rope arrow a little bit higher. And finally, I can move the ice axe arrow lower so it's not on her hand, it's actually on the ice axe. Next, as with the previous graphic, I'd like the hiker on top of the graphics. We'll do the same trick, make a magic mask node, connect it to the source, and then merge it back on top of the text layer. I'll just tidy up the node tree a little. Just like before, the text has disappeared because we have not yet configured the magic mask. I'm making sure I include her arms and body. And just like before, as soon as we've drawn in the shape and the magic mask node now knows what to cut out and what to leave, the text now reappears. Let's track that forward. I was a smart boy again. I drew my magic mask at the beginning of the comp, so all we need to do now is track forward. Brilliant. That's done and looking pretty awesome. You know what? After all that adjusting, I think I still need to tweak the lines and text a little bit further because that crampon and ice axe line, they are too close. They've almost merged into a single line. They're getting confusing. Let's fix that by moving the equipment text over and adjusting the arrow for the ice axe. Finally, I've had a change of heart. Let's make the background on the text semi-transparent and change it to blue. There you go, I'm happy with that. Let's see what the final product looks like. That's looking great. If you're following along and are looking for ideas to make your motion graphics even cooler, here's 3 quick ideas for you to try in your own time. 1. Use the line length and position properties to have the lines animate on. Don't forget, wherever you see those diamond icons, that's a property that you can animate. 2. Animate the ellipses so that they grow from nothing. You could even add some bounce to the animation, have them grow too big momentarily and then shrink back down. And finally, 3. Use the write on, write off properties in the Text Plus nodes to animate the text on one letter at a time. Well, hey, that's it. If you like the way we teach and would like to round out the rest of your Resolve knowledge, please check out our DaVinci Resolve for Editors course. It covers the media, edit, color, fairlight, and deliver pages. It's 9 entire hours long, so pretty thorough. It comes with 2 hours of practice media, you get our help, and you get a certificate from Blackmagic Design at the end. We find that when a long-time Resolve user goes through a systematic course, they have so many moments of discovery. Creatives are amazing at finding inventive ways of getting the job done. But just because you've been doing something the same way for years and years doesn't mean it's the best way of doing it. There might be new or old tools in the program that you don't realize can help you do amazing new things, or do the same things you already do, but better and faster. So whether you're a newcomer or an experienced editor, there's something for everyone inside DaVinci Resolve for editors. If you have any questions, please get in touch. There's free sample lessons from the course on our website. There's also our amazing 35-minute masterclass we mentioned earlier. All the details are down in the description. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out on future videos. And you can download the follow along media using the link in the description. Thanks for watching.